There's a guy named Jim who makes $83,000 a year. Not bad, right? He's been making roughly that amount for 12 years. His coworker Sarah makes 81,000. Started the same week as Jim. Jim has $1,700 in his checking account and 22,000 in retirement savings. Sarah has 470,000 in investments and could quit tomorrow if she wanted to. Same income, same time period. What's the difference? Jim spends his paycheck the second it arrives. Sarah built what I call a sorting system. And here's the thing that nobody tells you. Your paycheck is not income. It's a test. Every 2 weeks, your employer hands you a pile of potential and watches to see if you're smart enough to turn it into actual wealth or dumb enough to convert it into someone else's profit margin. Most people fail this test their entire lives. I'm going to walk you through the 7-step sorting system that separates people who retire early from people who die at their desk. And I'm not talking about budgeting apps or motivational nonsense. I'm talking about the actual mechanical process that compound interest requires to work its magic. Because here's what I learned after 20 plus years running my own business, surrounded by accountants who showed me how money actually moves. Wealth isn't built by earning more. It's built by installing the right sorting algorithm the moment cash hits your account. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send the report so I don't store any of your financial data. Link in the description. Let me give you the central metaphor that makes this entire system click. Think of your paycheck as a river. Every 2 weeks, water flows into your pond. Now, you have exactly two choices with that water. You can let it flow through channels you've pre-built, channels that lead to infrastructure that generates more water, or you can let it evaporate into consumption. Most people's ponds have no channels. The water just sits there, stagnant, and then slowly disappears into things they can't remember buying. The sorting system is about building permanent channels before the water arrives, not after, before. Because here's the psychological trap. If you see the money in your checking account, your brain categorizes it as available. And available money gets spent. It's not a character flaw. It's how human psychology works. So here's step one, and it's going to sound obvious until I tell you why 90% of people screw it up. Automate your savings before you see the money. I'm not talking about saving what's left over. That's a fairy tale. I'm talking about setting up an automatic transfer that pulls money out of your checking account within 60 seconds of your paycheck depositing. Why 60 seconds? Because if you wait even one day, you'll see that balance, your brain will recalculate your lifestyle around it, and suddenly you'll need that money for something urgent. There was a study done by economists at Harvard in 2019. They tracked spending patterns across 40,000 people. The people who automated their savings within 24 hours of payday saved 3 times more than people who manually transferred money at the end of the month. Same income levels. 3 times more savings. Why? Because seeing money makes you spend money. It's called mental accounting, and it's the reason every casino puts your winnings on a card instead of handing you cash. They know if you see it, you'll blow it. Now you might be thinking, okay, Bobby, but what if I have irregular expenses? What if I need that flexibility? Here's where it gets interesting. The amount you automate doesn't have to be huge. It has to be consistent. Even $200 per paycheck, automated, builds to $24,000 in 5 years, assuming you're just parking it in a high-yield savings account at 4%. That's not revolutionary math. But here's the part that nobody tells you. Those $24,000 are now outside your mental spending zone. Your brain doesn't categorize them as available, so you naturally adjust your lifestyle to your lower visible balance. You've tricked yourself into being disciplined without requiring any actual discipline. I did this accidentally in 2007, set up an auto transfer to a savings account I basically forgot about. Didn't even have the login saved. 5 years later, I logged in to close it and there was $41,000 sitting there. I genuinely had no idea, and that's when it clicked for me. The best wealth building system is the one that works when you're not paying attention. Step 2. Eliminate high-interest debt like it's a structure fire. Not because debt is morally bad, because it's mathematically catastrophic. If you're carrying a credit card balance at 22% interest, which is the average rate in 2026, and you're simultaneously contributing to a retirement account that might return 8%, you're paying a 14% penalty for the privilege of feeling like you're building wealth. That's not strategy. That's theater. Here's the thing about debt that the credit card companies have spent billions of dollars making sure you don't understand. Minimum payments are designed using an actuarial formula that maximizes the total interest you'll pay over the life of the balance. It's not a suggestion for how much you should pay. It's the exact amount calculated to keep you in debt for as long as legally possible. I've read the internal memos from Capital One. They literally have a term for customers who pay off their balance every month. They call them deadbeats because those customers aren't profitable. The profitable customer is the one who pays the minimum for 17 years. Let's run a real scenario. You have $8,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest. The minimum payment is probably around $200. If you pay only the minimum, it'll take you 43 years to pay off that $8,000. 43 years. And you'll pay $23,000 in interest. Now here's the kicker. If you took that same $200 per month and put it into an S&P 500 index fund returning 8% annually, in 43 years, you'd have over $900,000. You're not just paying interest, you're incinerating your entire retirement. So step 2 is simple and brutal. Every dollar that doesn't go to step 1 goes to high interest debt until it's gone. Not most dollars, every dollar. Because the return on eliminating 22% interest is 22%. Show me another investment that guarantees that return. Step 3 is where people start getting confused because it involves math that feels counterintuitive. Max out your employer 401k match before you do anything else with investment money. And I mean anything. This is the only actual free money that exists in finance. If your employer matches 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary, and you're not contributing that 6%, you're taking a 50% pay cut voluntarily. Let me say that again differently. You're leaving 50 cents on the table for every dollar you could be picking up. Nobody does this in any other context. If your boss said, hey, there's a pile of cash on the conference room table, it's yours, but you have to walk 12 feet to get it, you'd walk 12 feet. But for some reason, when it's a 401k match, people shrug and say they'll get to it later. I've seen this up close. When I was running my business, we offered a 4% match. 37% of our employees didn't contribute enough to get the full match. We literally held meetings explaining this was free money. Didn't matter. And here's why. It's the same psychology as step 1. The 401k contribution comes out before they see the money, so it feels like a loss. But the match is theoretical, something that happens in an account they never look at, so it doesn't feel like a gain. The math says it's a gain. The psychology says it's a loss. Psychology wins every time, which is why you need the system to override your psychology. You set up the contribution once, and then your brain stops thinking about it. Now here's the 4th step, and this is where the sorting system starts to compound in ways that aren't obvious at first. Build a sinking fund for irregular expenses. What's a sinking fund? It's a separate account where you set aside small amounts every paycheck for expenses you know are coming but aren't monthly. Car insurance, holiday gifts, that thing where your washing machine dies and you need to replace it. Most people treat these expenses like emergencies. They're not emergencies. They're predictable. You know you're going to pay car insurance. You know holidays happen in December. These aren't surprises. They're just irregular. Here's where this gets interesting from an incentives perspective. If you don't have a sinking fund, irregular expenses come out of either your checking account, which makes you feel broke, or your emergency fund, which isn't really an emergency fund anymore, or worst case, a credit card, which triggers the debt spiral we just talked about. But if you're setting aside even $75 per paycheck into a sinking fund, you've got $1,800 per year to handle irregular expenses without touching anything else. And psychologically, this is massive because it breaks the cycle of feeling like you're always one expense away from disaster. You're not. You plan for it. The washing machine dies, and instead of panic, it's just, oh, that's what the sinking fund is for. I learned this one the hard way. Back in 2011, I had what I thought was a solid financial plan. Good income, maxing out retirement accounts, the whole thing. Then my HVAC system died. $7,000. And I realized I had built this entire wealth-building structure on the assumption that nothing would ever break, which is insane. Everything breaks. So I started running the numbers on every irregular expense I'd had over the previous 3 years. Came out to about $2,200 per year. I divided that by 26 paychecks and started auto-transferring $85 per paycheck into a separate account. Changed everything. Not because $85 is life-changing money, but because it removed the psychological chaos of unexpected but totally predictable expenses. Step 5. Invest in index funds, not individual stocks, not crypto, not your brother-in-law's startup. Low-cost index funds. And before you tune out because this sounds boring, let me tell you why this step is actually the most asymmetric bet in finance. The S&P 500 has returned an average of about 10% annually since 1957. Some years up, some years down, but the long-term average is around 10%. Now, here's what most people don't realize. That 10% annual return isn't magic. It's a byproduct of the system. The 500 largest companies in America are legally required to maximize shareholder value. They have entire teams of people whose only job is to make the stock price go up. You're not betting on your ability to pick winners. You're betting on the incentive structure of American capitalism, which has been pretty consistent for about 70 years. Compare that to individual stock picking. There was a study done by Dalbar in 2023 analyzing investor returns versus market returns over a 20-year period. The S&P 500 returned 9.8% annually. The average individual investor returned 3.6% annually. Same time period, 6.2% gap. Why? Because individual investors buy high when they're excited and sell low when they're scared. They're trying to time the market. They're chasing performance. They're doing exactly what their psychology tells them to do, which is exactly the wrong thing. Index funds remove that entire psychological layer. You buy, you hold, you let the incentive structure of capitalism do the work. And here's the part that actually keeps me up at night when I think about how many people miss this. The difference between 3.6% returns and 9.8% returns over 30 years on a $10,000 annual contribution is the difference between $420,000 and $1.8 million. Same contributions, different returns, $1.4 million gap. That's not a rounding error. That's your entire retirement. Step 6, increase your savings rate every time you get a raise. This is called lifestyle arbitrage, and it's the secret that high net worth individuals use to build wealth invisibly. Here's how it works. You get a 10% raise. Instead of increasing your lifestyle by 10%, you increase your savings by 10% and your lifestyle stays the same. Your brain doesn't register a loss because you're not cutting anything. You just didn't inflate your lifestyle to match your income, but mathematically, you're now saving significantly more. Let's say you make $70,000 and you're saving 10%, which is $7,000 per year. You get a 10% raise to $77,000. If you keep your lifestyle at $70,000 and save the entire $7,000 increase, you're now saving $14,000 per year. You doubled your savings rate without feeling any lifestyle change. This is how people making $100,000 end up with more wealth than people making $300,000. The $300,000 earner inflated their lifestyle to match their income. $300,000 house, 3 car payments, private school tuition. Their savings rate is still 10%, so they're saving $30,000 per year. Sounds like a lot. But the $100,000 earner who kept their lifestyle locked at $70,000 and saved the growth is saving $30,000 per year too. Same savings on 1/3 the income. 20 years later, assuming both are getting 8% returns, they have the same net worth, but one of them is trapped by their lifestyle and the other one has options. I watched this play out with 2 guys I knew from business school. Both got jobs in consulting in 2003. Both started at $90,000. One guy, let's call him Mike, kept living like a grad student. Roommates, used car, cooked at home, got promoted, kept the same lifestyle. Other guy, David, inflated his lifestyle with every raise. By 2015, Mike was making $200,000 and still living like he made $90,000, saving over $100,000 per year. David was making $220,000, had a mortgage on a $600,000 house, 2 car payments, and was saving maybe $15,000 per year. Mike retired in 2021 at 43 years old with $2.1 million invested. David is still working, will probably work until he's 65. Same intelligence, same opportunities, different sorting system. Step 7, and this is the one that ties everything together. Review your system quarterly, not daily. This sounds like generic advice until you understand the psychology behind it. If you check your investment accounts every day, you will make emotional decisions, guaranteed. The market drops 3%, you panic. It jumps 5%, you get greedy and think about taking profits. You're introducing psychological volatility into a system that's designed to be mechanical. But if you only review quarterly, you smooth out the emotional peaks and valleys. You're looking at trends, not daily noise, and you're maintaining the discipline that makes the whole sorting system work. There's a famous study from Vanguard in 2012 that tracked investor behavior during the 2008 crash. The investors who checked their accounts daily were 3 times more likely to sell at the bottom compared to investors who only check quarterly, 3 times more likely to lock in losses at the worst possible moment. Why? Because daily checking turns investing into an emotional experience. Quarterly checking keeps it mechanical. You're just following the system. Now, let me give you a real case study with actual numbers so you can see how this sorting system compounds. Meet Sarah. She's 34 years old, makes $76,000 per year, takes home about $54,000 after taxes and health insurance. That's about $4,500 per month. Here's how she set up her sorting system. Step 1, automated $500 per month into a high-yield savings account. That's her emergency fund and sinking fund combined. Step 2, she had $11,000 in credit card debt at 19% interest. She put an extra $600 per month toward that, paid it off in 18 months. Step 3, she maxed her employer 401k match, which required contributing 6% of her income. That's $380 per month, with the match bringing it to $570. Step 4, once the credit card was gone, that $600 per month went into a taxable brokerage account buying index funds. Step 5, she got a raise from $76,000 to $82,000. Instead of upgrading her apartment, she increased her index fund contribution to $800 per month. So let's run the 30-year numbers, assuming she maintains this system and gets the historical S&P return of 10% annually. Her 401k with the employer match, contributing $570 monthly, grows to $1.3 million. Her taxable brokerage account, contributing $800 monthly after the debt is paid off in year 2, grows to $1.7 million. Her emergency fund and sinking fund, contributing $500 monthly to a 4% high-yield account, grows to $350,000. Total net worth at age 64, $3.35 million on an income that started at $76,000. She didn't inherit money. She didn't get lucky with crypto. She didn't start a business. She just installed a sorting system and let it run for 30 years. Compare that to her coworker Jim, who makes the same amount but doesn't have a sorting system. Jim spends everything he earns. He has the same lifestyle as Sarah, actually slightly better because he's not diverting money to savings. But at age 64, Jim has whatever's in his 401k from the employer match only, which would be about $600,000, assuming he at least did that. Sarah has $3.35 million, Jim has $600,000, same income, different system. That $2.75 million gap is the cost of not having a sorting system. Now you might be thinking, okay, Bobby, but what about lifestyle? What about enjoying life? Jim got to enjoy his money for 30 years. Sarah was depriving herself. And this is where everyone gets it wrong. Sarah wasn't depriving herself of anything. She was living on $4,500 per month. Jim was also living on $4,500 per month. Same lifestyle. The difference is Sarah's money was flowing through channels she built, channels that compounded into millions, while Jim's money was evaporating into consumption he can't even remember. Sarah gets to retire at 64 and live on $134,000 per year, assuming a 4% withdrawal rate, which is more than double what she was making while working. Jim gets to live on $24,000 per year from Social Security and whatever part-time job he can find. Who actually enjoyed life more? The person who built optionality or the person who locked themselves into working until they physically can't anymore? Here's a little cutaway for you. I once had a financial advisor tell me, "You can't take it with you," referring to money. And I said, "You're right, but I can take my time back while I'm alive, which is what money buys if you use it correctly." He didn't have a response to that. Advisors are trained to sell you products, not philosophy. Another quick one. There's a subreddit where people post their net worth milestones. Guy posted that he hit 1 million at age 42 on a teacher's salary of 58,000. Everyone asked how. His answer was 6 words. "I automated everything and forgot about it." That's the system. That's the whole game. Look, the sorting system I just described isn't complicated. It's not sexy. It won't make you rich overnight, but it's mathematically certain. And that's what separates people who retire early from people who die at their desks. The people who retire early installed a system that runs automatically. The people who die at their desks are still trying to manually manage their money, which means they're still fighting their own psychology every single day. And psychology always wins in the end. So here are your 3 practical takeaways. 1. Automate every single step of this system within 72 hours of watching this video. Not next month, this week. Because if you wait, you won't do it. 2. Treat your lifestyle like a fixed cost, not a variable expense. When your income goes up, your lifestyle stays the same and your savings rate goes up. This is the only way to build real wealth on a normal income. 3. Check your investment accounts quarterly, not daily. Daily checking introduces emotional volatility into a system that's designed to be mechanical. Quarterly checking keeps you disciplined. And here's the reality nobody wants to hear. The sorting system works for everyone, but most people won't install it. Not because they don't understand it, because they don't want to feel like they're sacrificing. They want to feel like they're living. But here's the thing they miss. The sacrifice isn't living on less. The sacrifice is giving up optionality, giving up the ability to retire early, giving up the ability to take a year off if you want to, giving up the ability to tell your boss to shove it if they cross a line. That's the real sacrifice. And most people make that sacrifice without even realizing they're doing it. Don't work for money. Own the companies that do. The sorting system is how you make that transition from worker to owner. It's not fast, it's not exciting, but it's certain. And certainty is the most valuable thing in finance.